The crown atrium of Prime was not built for humans. It was taller than any cathedral on Earth, shaped like a living heart of silver stone and transparent crystal veins. Blue light moved inside the walls as if the palace itself was alive. Patterns shifted across the floor like waves on the ocean. Every step inside echoed not only in sound but in vibration, as though the building wanted to remind all who entered that they stood in the House of Rulers, not guests. Captain Mira Hale tried not to look up for too long. She was used to space stations, military bunkers, and old human cities where buildings served purpose first and beauty second. Here everything seemed built to impress and unsettle. She forced herself to walk calmly, one measured step after another, her boots clicking against the shining floor. On both sides of her, rows of guards stood in silence. They were tall, armored in plates that glowed faintly with silver-blue energy, their faces hidden behind carved masks of ivory and black. Not a single guard moved. Their discipline was perfect, but Mira noticed something odd. Their heads tilted ever so slightly as she passed, not in disrespect but in curiosity. Humans were rare in this hall, and rarer still in positions of diplomacy. At the far end of the atrium sat the throne, though it was not a chair in any human sense. It was a platform of braided crystal, rising like roots of a great tree. Upon it rested the alien queen, Seraphil of the House Eternal. Her form was graceful, her crown a natural extension of her head, as if the world itself had shaped her for command. She was robed in flowing material that shimmered between colors, never fixed, always shifting with the light. Her eyes were calm, observant, and unreadable. Mira had been told that the queen rarely smiled. She was said to be a ruler who spoke in riddles, who kept even her closest advisors unsure of her true thoughts. Mira knew enough about diplomacy to realize that every word here was a blade, and every silence was a shield. She reached the center of the atrium and bowed, not too low but with respect. "Your Majesty," she said in a steady voice, "on behalf of Earth and the allied colonies, I bring you greetings and goodwill." The queen did not reply at once. The silence stretched heavy as stone. The courtiers behind the throne shifted slightly, whispering in a language Mira's translator chip did not catch. The guards' masks reflected the light, unreadable, unblinking. Finally, the queen's voice echoed through the chamber, smooth and resonant. "Captain Mira Hale, human envoy, we welcome you." The translator carried the words into Mira's ear, but she also felt them in her chest, as if the sound vibrated through the floor. She kept her expression calm. "You come to speak of alliance," the queen continued. "You come to argue for trust. Yet you are young, and your people are younger still, barely risen into the stars. Why should the House Eternal give you place among the old powers?" Mira had prepared for this question. She straightened her back, meeting the queen's gaze directly. "Because even the youngest can bring something of value. We are not asking for your throne. We are asking for a seat at the table, and we are willing to earn it through action, not just words." There was another silence, and Mira wondered if she had spoken too boldly. She remembered the advice given to her before she left Earth. The queen values respect, but she despises fear. Do not bow too deeply. Do not speak too humbly. Speak as one who knows her own worth. The queen tilted her head slightly. Her eyes narrowed with interest. Then, almost too softly to hear, she said, "I wish you were my husband, human." The words echoed like a spark through dry grass. The chamber reacted at once. Courtiers gasped in shock. Guards shifted their weight, not moving from their posts but clearly alert. The translators clicked as if unsure how to render the phrase. Mira felt every eye in the atrium land on her. Her mind raced. The queen had spoken it almost idly, perhaps even as a private thought voiced aloud. Yet the words had carried across the hall, and now no one could ignore them. If she responded wrongly, the moment could collapse into scandal or insult. If she answered with arrogance, she could offend the entire court. If she answered with silence, it could be taken as weakness. Mira forced her shoulders to remain relaxed. She allowed a small smile to touch her lips, not mocking, not overly warm, simply steady. "Your Majesty," she said clearly, "I am honored by your words. On Earth, when someone says such a thing, it means they see qualities worth respecting. I take it as the highest compliment." The queen's eyes glimmered. For a heartbeat, Mira thought she saw a flicker of amusement, maybe even approval. The courtiers whispered more fiercely now, some with outrage, others with curiosity. The guards remained silent, their masks hiding their reactions, but Mira could feel their gaze burning through her like sunlight through glass. Then something unexpected happened. The Queen let out a soft sound, a laugh, light and genuine. It was brief, but in the silence of the hall it was thunder. The guards stiffened. The courtiers froze. A laugh from the Queen was not ordinary. It was rare enough to become the subject of history itself. "You answer as no one else would," the Queen said. "Direct, honest, your people do not dance with shadows. You walk into them and claim them as your own." "Interesting." Mira inclined her head. "We walk into them together, Majesty. That is how we survive." The Queen studied her for a long moment. The silence this time was not heavy but thoughtful. Then she gestured with one hand and the courtiers fell quiet. "You may speak further," she said. And just like that, Mira realized she had passed the first trial of the court. She had not fallen into the trap of fear. She had not tried to twist her answer into riddles. She had answered as a human, and that had been enough. Still, she knew the day was only beginning. The guards had seen her stand against the weight of the Queen's words, but they would keep watching. The courtiers had heard the Queen laugh, but they would not forget the moment of scandal. And the Queen herself had shown a flash of humanity, or something like it, that no one else in the hall would ever dare to mention aloud. Mira drew a slow breath. Her journey into the heart of alien politics had begun, and every step from here would be a test not only of her skill, but of the values her species carried into the stars. The chamber did not return to calm quickly. Even after the Queen's laugh faded, the ripples of surprise moved through the hall like invisible waves. Courtiers bent their heads together, whispering, weighing every gesture, every breath. The guards did not move, but their silence carried weight, like statues holding judgment. Captain Mira Hale stood in the center of it all, her hands steady at her sides. She told herself to breathe evenly, to look neither too proud nor too humbled. She was not here to win hearts with charm. She was here to prove that humans belonged in these halls of power. The Queen raised her hand. The whispers stilled at once. All sound except for the faint hum of the living walls vanished. "It is time," said Queen Serathil, "for the envoy to walk the ritual." Mira frowned slightly. No one had told her about a ritual today. She glanced at the translator band on her wrist, but it only gave her the plain words. Ritual, walk, envoy, nothing more. Two attendants in flowing silver cloaks stepped forward from behind the throne. They carried long staffs tipped with glowing stones. Bowing to the Queen, they turned and began walking down the length of the atrium. The glowing stones left faint trails of light behind them, like chalk on a board. The Queen's gaze settled on Mira. "Follow. Answer with truth. Step with honor." Mira gave a single nod. Whatever this ritual was, there was no escape. If she refused, it would mean disrespect. If she stumbled, it would mean weakness. She followed the attendants. Each time they stopped, one would ask a question in the Queen's tongue. The translator spoke in Mira's ear, though it stumbled over idioms. "What do humans guard most fiercely?" the first attendant asked. Mira thought of her training. The correct answer was probably something poetic, something that matched their culture. But she remembered the Queen's laugh when she had spoken simply. So she answered in plain truth. "We guard our families," she said, "not only by blood, also by choice. Those we call friends, those we call our own." The attendant tilted his head, perhaps surprised. He struck the staff against the ground. The glowing stone pulsed. They walked on, another stop. Another question. What do humans fear most deeply? Mira hesitated only a moment. Losing the chance to protect what we love. To be too late. To fail the people who depend on us. Again, the staff struck. The light grew brighter. The ritual went on, one question after another. Some were strange, asking about colors, about songs, about how humans shaped stone. Mira answered each with honesty, even when the answer seemed too small for such a grand hall. Yet with each response, the glowing trail behind them grew steadier, as if weaving a pattern only the attendants understood. Finally, the attendants stopped before the throne once more. They bowed low and struck their staffs together. A clear ringing sound filled the atrium. "The envoy has spoken with no shadow," one attendant declared. "The envoy has stepped with no falter," said the other. The Queen leaned forward, slightly on her crystal throne. "Then the ritual is sealed." The courtiers bowed. The guards remained statues. Mira felt the weight of the moment, though she still did not fully understand its meaning. She had walked their ritual with nothing but human honesty, and somehow it had satisfied them. But peace never lasted long in such halls. From the far side of the chamber, a counselor in gold-trimmed robes stepped forward. His voice was sharp, his words rushing so quickly that Mira's translator almost failed to keep pace. "This is dangerous," he declared, "Your Majesty. The human speaks plainly only because she does not know our ways. Already her words bring confusion. The ritual is not meant to be answered so simply. It is meant to show wisdom, to show knowledge of metaphor. This envoy mocks us without even knowing it." Mira's chest tightened. She had suspected there would be opposition, but hearing it aloud before the Queen was a different weight entirely. Before she could speak, another courtier added fuel. "Did you not hear, Majesty? When she said humans fear failing those they love, it was translated as humans fear weakness in their rulers. Some believe she challenged your throne." The whispers surged again. Courtiers leaned into one another, muttering, speculating, twisting her plain words into dangerous shapes. The guard shifted, subtle but sharp, as if ready for command. Mira raised her hand slightly. "Majesty, may I explain?" The Queen looked at her for a long, unbroken moment. Then she inclined her head. "You may." Mira drew a breath. She kept her tone calm, respectful, but unbending. "The translation has turned my meaning into something it was not. On Earth, when we speak of fear, we do not always mean rulers or thrones. We mean the people closest to us. Our lives are not only about command and obedience. They are about protecting one another, even in small ways. That is the truth of what I said." The Queen's expression did not change, but her eyes seemed sharper now, more alert. The counselor pressed again. "Majesty, you see the danger. If humans cannot master even our words, how can they claim to stand as equals?" It was at that moment that a sudden tremor shook the floor. Mira's head snapped toward the far wall. The blue light in the veins of the crystal flickered. The living patterns on the ground stuttered like a failing heartbeat. Gasps filled the hall. Attendants cried out in alarm. The glowing trail left by the ritual began to fade, breaking apart as though erased. "The stabilizer," someone shouted. "It is failing." Mira looked quickly around. She remembered her briefing. The palace was built with living crystal and energy veins. It needed constant balance, a kind of heartbeat provided by a stabilizer deep within its structure. If it failed, parts of the atrium might collapse. The guards moved into defensive stances, but they were not trained for repair. The courtiers scattered back. The attendants clutched their staffs helplessly. Mira's instincts took over. She ran toward the section of wall where the light flickered most wildly. The guards almost blocked her, but she raised her voice. "Let me see it. I can help." Perhaps it was the weight of the ritual or the echo of the Queen's laugh, but the guards stepped aside. Mira pressed her hand against the trembling wall. The crystal pulsed under her palm, like a machine on the edge of failure. She had no alien training, no sacred knowledge, but she had spent her life fixing human machines in desperate moments. Air recyclers in deep space, engines in storm belts, weapons that jammed in the middle of battle. "Show me the rhythm," she whispered to herself. She tapped the wall, listening to the echoes. Too fast, too uneven. She pressed her other hand along the joint, feeling for vibration. There, a junction point glowing faintly. "Can you open this?" she asked one of the guards. The guard hesitated, then pressed a hidden catch. The crystal split to reveal a cluster of living wires glowing and trembling. They sparked weakly. Mira reached in carefully. "It's like a failing circuit," she muttered. She pulled a small tool from her belt. Something simple, a human multi-tool. With gentle prods and quick adjustments, she shifted connections, tightening one, pressing another back into place. She hummed under her breath, keeping a steady rhythm to guide her hands. The wires pulsed once, twice, then steadied. The wall gave a deep sigh, the vibrations fading into calm. Across the hall, the light returned to its smooth, flowing patterns. The glowing trail of the ritual flickered back into being, whole once more. Silence fell. Mira pulled her hand back, breathing hard but steady. She looked up at the Queen. "It's stable now, at least for the moment. You'll need your engineers to check the deeper systems, but it will hold." The Queen rose from her throne, slowly. Her gaze was fixed on Mira, sharp and unreadable. "Untrained," the Queen said softly, "without permission. Yet you touched what none of my court would dare touch." Mira straightened. "Because it needed to be done. And because sometimes, Majesty, Waiting for permission costs lives. Humans are taught to try, even when we don't know the full map. We act because delay can be worse than failure. The courtiers whispered again, but their tone had shifted. No longer only suspicion, now curiosity, perhaps even a trace of respect. The queen's lips curved, not into a laugh this time, but into something else, the faintest shadow of a smile. "You have saved my hall," she said, "and you have taught my guards a lesson without meaning to. I will remember this." The guards still watched Mira, silent, unreadable, but now their eyes behind the masks carried a different weight. Not just suspicion, but a kind of watchful respect. Mira bowed her head slightly. The test had changed. She had not only spoken words, she had acted, and in action she had shown what it meant to be human. And in this alien court, where silence was as sharp as a blade, her simple courage had cut deeper than ritual ever could. The queen's faint smile lingered for only a moment, before her face returned to calm authority. The court whispered about the stabilizer and the human envoy who had dared to touch it. Some murmured admiration, others disbelief, but no one spoke loudly enough for their words to challenge the throne. Captain Mira Hale stood quietly, her hands at her sides, steadying her breath. She had not planned to repair alien systems in front of royalty, but instinct had guided her, the same instinct that had kept her alive through war zones and collapsing stations. She told herself not to relax. In a place like this, one victory could turn into the seed of the next test. And the test came sooner than she imagined. The floor beneath them trembled once more. Not from failing crystal this time, but from something beyond the palace walls. The light in the veins of the atrium flickered again, sharper like lightning forced through narrow channels. A guard broke the silence. External strike detected. At once, the rows of guards shifted into defensive stances. Their spears of silver-blue light unfolded with a sound like breaking glass. Courtiers gasped, retreating toward the safety alcoves at the edges of the chamber. The queen did not rise, but her eyes narrowed. "Report." Another guard's voice rang through the chamber, precise and calm. Energy surge from orbit. Pattern matches pirate fleet weapons. At least 3 ships. They target the palace. Mira's stomach clenched. She knew of these pirates. Fragmented groups that preyed on trade routes, always seeking to prove that the mighty House Eternal was not untouchable. They attacked in sudden strikes, fast and disruptive, more for humiliation than conquest. The palace shuddered again as another pulse struck. Crystal veins sparked, and one of the tall glass pillars cracked from top to bottom with a sharp ringing note. "Shields holding," the guard reported, but resonance breach detected. "Secondary systems unstable." Mira's eyes swept the chamber. She saw the guards forming ranks, spears raised, but their movements were precise, almost too precise. They moved as if every step had been drilled 1,000 times. Perfect for ceremony, but not for the chaos of surprise. Her instincts whispered that their discipline might not be enough. The queen lifted one hand. "Form the crown defense. Hold positions. Protect the throne." The guards obeyed at once, forming a protective circle around the throne. They planted their spears, and blue energy arched between them, weaving a barrier. Mira frowned. "With respect, Majesty, that protects you, but it does not stop the palace from falling apart." A few courtiers turned sharply at her boldness, but Mira stepped forward. She pointed to the flickering veins in the walls.
"The stabilizer I repaired earlier is tied into your shields, isn't it?"
"Those pulses are shaking it apart again. If the resonance collapses, your barrier will fold even if your guards stand unbroken." The queen's gaze fixed on her. "You speak as though you see the system." "I see enough," Mira answered. "And I've seen how rigid defense fails when the threat adapts. Let me help. Let me guide your guards." Silence stretched. The courtiers looked horrified at the thought. The guards remained still, their discipline unbroken, but Mira could feel their eyes on her through the masks. At last the queen said, "You have one chance, human. Show me." Mira moved quickly toward the control ring at the edge of the atrium, where strands of crystal converged like rivers. Guards shifted as if to block her, but one raised a hand and stepped aside. Perhaps her earlier repair had bought her enough trust. She placed her hand on the glowing panel. Energy rushed beneath her skin, strange but not hostile. Patterns danced across the surface, shapes too complex for instant translation. She forced herself not to panic. Machines, no matter how alien, still obeyed rules. And rules could be bent. Another surge hit the palace. The shield around the throne wavered. Sparks cascaded across the ceiling like falling stars. "Status," Mira called. A guard answered. "Shield's at 70%, falling." "Then we change tactics," Mira said firmly. She turned toward the circle of armored figures. "Your formation is too tight. You're feeding power into one barrier, but the resonance is bleeding it away. Spread out, channel smaller arcs. Make it flexible, not rigid." The guards did not move. Courtiers muttered in shock. Giving orders to the Queen's Guard was unthinkable. Mira stepped forward, her voice sharper. "If you stand only in one circle, the next surge will break you. Trust me, adapt now." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the Queen's voice cut through. "Do as she says." The guards obeyed instantly. They broke their circle, spreading into lines and arcs that touched the walls and pillars. Their spears pulsed as they redirected energy into smaller, shifting shields. Mira's hands flew across the control surface. She rerouted energy streams, forcing feedback loops into the palace's outer veins. It was not neat. It was not perfect. But it turned rigid defense into a net that bent and flexed with each strike. The next pulse hit. The palace shook, but this time the energy rippled through the new pattern instead of shattering against it. The lights flickered, then steadied. Another strike followed. The shields wavered but held, dispersing the force like water through many channels. The guards adjusted their stances quickly now, watching Mira's signals, her raised hand, her sharp nods, her quick gestures. She guided them not with ritual but with the instinct of someone who had commanded soldiers in real chaos. One more strike hit. The hall trembled, but the shields flexed again and held. Silence followed, broken only by the slow hum of stabilizing energy. "Enemy ships retreating," a guard reported. No further strikes detected. A collective breath of relief passed through the chamber. Courtiers lowered their heads. The guards returned to stillness, but Mira noticed something different in their posture. They no longer watched her as a reckless outsider. They watched her as a commander whose orders had saved them. She turned back toward the Queen. Her chest rose and fell with steady breaths. Her palms tingled with the aftershock of the alien controls, but she kept her stance strong. "It will hold for now," she said, "but you'll need to rebuild parts of the system to prevent this from happening again." The Queen studied her. For a long moment the chamber was silent. Then Sarathel spoke. "You moved my guard as if they were your own," she said. "You bent the palace as if it were your tool. You acted without hesitation, in defiance of ritual." Mira held her gaze. "Because hesitation would have broken everything. Humans learn to adapt, Majesty. We don't always know the perfect path, but we find one that works. That is how we survive." The Queen rose slowly from her throne. Her voice carried like thunder. "The human has faced the strike. The human has held the hall. The human has shown me something my oldest warriors did not." Whispers surged among the courtiers. Some sounded outraged, others amazed. The guards remained still, but Mira felt their silent acknowledgement. The Queen stepped down from her crystal throne, descending toward Mira. When she reached the bottom, she stood close enough that Mira could see the fine detail of her crown, the shifting colors of her robe, the quiet intensity of her eyes. "You claim place among the powers of this galaxy," the Queen said. "Perhaps you have earned it. But know this, Captain Mira Hale. Every action here is a test and every victory invites the next trial. Are you ready to continue?" Mira's voice was steady. "I am." The Queen's eyes glimmered with something that might have been approval, or challenge, or both. Around them the guards lowered their spears. The court murmured in awe and disbelief. The palace steadied, its veins glowing with calm rhythm once more, and Mira knew the test was far from over. The atrium still carried the echo of the attack. Though the stabilizers hummed steadily now and the shields had returned to balance, the air felt charged as if the crystal walls remembered the assault. Courtiers whispered from the edges, speaking of pirates and omens, of how the Queen's Guard had moved not by ritual command but by the guidance of a human. Captain Mira Hale stood at the center of that storm of attention. She tried to keep her breathing calm and her posture firm, though her muscles ached from tension. She had guided alien soldiers through chaos and the palace still stood. But she knew that in court such as this, triumphs were fragile things. The Queen descended from her throne, her robe shifting colors with each step. The guards parted for her, lowering their spears. Courtiers bowed deeply, their heads nearly touching the shining floor. When she stopped before Mira, silence fell. You have faced the strike and turned it aside, the queen said, her voice steady, carrying to every corner of the hall. You guided my guard with instincts that are not ours. You acted with courage where hesitation might have broken all. For this you have my respect. Mira bowed her head slightly. Thank you, Majesty. I only did what had to be done. The queen's gaze did not soften. And yet what you have done carries weight. Already the court whispers. Already they wonder what it means for a human to stand where no human has stood before. Mira glanced at the rows of courtiers. Their eyes were sharp, their whispers fierce, their faces unreadable. She could almost feel them shaping rumors, weaving stories that would travel faster than any starship. The queen lifted her hand. At once the murmurs ceased. There is one path, the queen declared, her voice firm and deliberate, that can bind this act into history. One path that can silence doubt and turn scandal into strength. Mira felt the air grow heavier. She waited, the queen's eyes held hers. I will champion you as more than envoy. I will name you partner in bond. I will offer alliance not only between Earth and my house, but between you and me, sealed by tradition older than this palace, a union of covenant. The words fell like a shockwave through the hall. Courtiers gasped aloud. Some staggered as if struck. Guards did not move, but the silence around them was thick with tension. Mira's pulse quickened. She understood at once what the queen meant. In this culture, a union was not always marriage in the human sense. Sometimes it was symbolic, a way to bind peoples together through ritual bond. But to many watching, the queen's words would sound like something deeper, something scandalous and impossible. The queen spoke again, her voice calm but unyielding. This will not be simple. Some will resist. Some will call it folly. But if you accept, the bond will stand as shield against doubt. If you refuse, the alliance may fracture, for many will see rejection not as choice but as insult. Mira's thoughts raced. If she said yes, she risked being seen not as envoy but as symbol, perhaps even as token. She would be bound to a role she did not fully understand, trapped by expectations of an alien court. If she said no, the alliance might shatter before it ever began, and Earth could lose its chance to stand among the stars as equal. She felt the weight of every gaze in the hall pressing on her. For a moment, silence stretched so long that the crystal walls themselves seemed to wait. Then Mira drew a slow breath and raised her head. Her voice was clear. Majesty, I cannot accept as it is given, but I will not reject your honor. There must be another way. A ripple of shock moved through the courtiers. Some gasped. Others whispered furiously. Even the guards shifted ever so slightly as though bracing for command. The queen tilted her head. Another way? Mira nodded. On Earth, when we speak of partnership, it does not always mean binding lives into one path. Sometimes it means standing side by side as equals, working together, building trust step by step. Let me propose this. Not a bond of husband and wife, nor of ruler and servant, but a covenant of exchange. A public vow that our peoples will learn from one another, share knowledge, stand together when danger rises. A bond of trust, not possession. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. You would remake a tradition older than your world's first stars. Mira held her gaze. Tradition holds power, but so does change. If we must write this story into history, then let it be a story that both our peoples can stand behind without shame. Let it be a covenant that builds, not a chain that binds. The hall fell silent again. The courtiers froze, unable to guess how the queen would respond. The guards remained motionless, though Mira felt their attention sharpen, as if they too waited for judgment. For a long moment, the queen said nothing. Then slowly her lips curved into something rare, a true smile. You speak as no one in this hall would dare, she said softly. You refuse the shape given to you, yet you offer another that may be stronger. This is boldness not of arrogance, but of vision. She turned to the court, her robe shimmering in a burst of colors. Her voice rang out, carrying through the atrium like thunder. Hear me. The human envoy has spoken, not of rejection, but of covenant. Not of insult, but of new tradition. From this day, let there be a bond of exchange between Earth and the House Eternal. Let it be sealed not by the silence of fear, but by the voice of trust. The courtiers cried out, some in disbelief, others in reluctant awe. They bowed low, though some with stiff resistance. The guards lowered their spears in unison, the gesture sharp and final. Mira felt a wave of relief and tension all at once. She had avoided the trap of yes or no, but she knew this choice would echo far beyond the atrium. The queen turned back to her. You have given me what I did not expect. A new path where there was only one. Remember this, human. Every gift you give to this court carries weight. Every word you speak becomes a stone in the palace of history. Walk carefully. Mira inclined her head. I understand, Majesty. But if we are to walk together, then let the palace of history be built with open hands, not closed fists. The queen studied her for a moment longer. Then she raised her hand. The attendants struck their staffs and the chamber rang with a sound like a bell of crystal. It is done, she said. The covenant was sealed. The courtiers bowed again, though Mira could see storm clouds in their expressions. Some would never forgive this break in tradition. Others would whisper that the queen had been changed by a human. But the bond had been made and it would be written into record. The guards stood in silence, but Mira felt their eyes on her. She knew they would watch her differently now, not only as outsider, but as the one who had reshaped the queen's words with courage. When the chamber emptied at last and only a few guards remained, Mira stood quietly, staring up at the living walls of crystal. She had walked into an alien court with nothing but honesty and instinct, and now she had helped carve a new tradition from stone older than her own world. She wondered what the next trial would be. She knew it would come. The queen had warned her, but for now she let herself take one deep breath. She had not failed. Not yet. The covenant was sealed, but peace in a hall of whispers was never complete. For days, Captain Mira Hale remained within the shining palace. She could feel the shift in the air wherever she walked. Courtiers now bowed with ritual politeness, but their eyes spoke other things. Distrust, curiosity, sometimes even admiration. The guards still kept their disciplined silence, though Mira sensed their stance had changed. She was no longer seen as a fragile guest. She was something different now, something that unsettled the pillars of tradition. One evening, she stood on a balcony that overlooked the endless horizon of the alien capital. The sky shimmered with colors born from two suns sinking together. Towers of crystal reached high, bending light into rivers that seemed to flow in the air. She let the sight steady her thoughts, but her mind kept circling back to the same question. Had she done the right thing? Behind her, the queen approached. Mira knew without turning. The queen carried a presence that bent the space around her. Her robe moved as if alive, reflecting both sunset and starlight. You watch the horizon as if it holds answers, the queen said softly. Mira gave a faint smile. Sometimes on Earth, people say the horizon is where dreams and doubts meet. I suppose I was hoping to find which one this is. The queen came to stand beside her. Together they looked out at the vast city, its lights beginning to glow as night fell. You have unsettled the court, the queen admitted. They argue in hidden chambers. Some praise your courage. Others curse your defiance. All speak of you. That alone is power. Mira folded her arms. Power can be dangerous. I didn't come here for that. I came to help my world take its first steps into the stars. And yet, the queen said, turning her gaze on her, you could not take those steps without changing the ground you walked on. That is the nature of humans, is it not? To step into a place and leave it altered. Mira considered the words. They sounded more like truth than flattery. Tell me, Mira asked quietly, did you mean it? When you said those words in the atrium, that wish? The queen's eyes softened. Wishes carry many layers. Part was tradition, part was strategy, but part was truth. You move with instinct we do not understand. In you I see not only envoy but companion in challenge. If I were of your people, perhaps the words would mean only love. Here they mean more, they mean alliance, they mean courage, and yes, perhaps even longing. Mira's breath caught. For a moment silence stretched between them, not tense but fragile. She did not know what to say, so she looked back toward the horizon. Before words could rise, a sound filled the air, a deep hum of alarm. Both women turned sharply toward the city. Lights along the towers flickered. From the far edge of the sky, shadows moved like dark wings. An attendant rushed onto the balcony, bowing quickly. Majesty, reports confirm. A fleet approaches, raiders more than before. They mean to test the Covenant's strength. The queen's eyes hardened. Summon the guard, ready the shields. Send word through every channel. She turned to Mira. It seems your horizon holds no dreams tonight, only trials. Mira felt her chest tighten, but she nodded firmly. Then we face it together. The palace transformed into a fortress in minutes. Shields flared, painting the night sky with sharp lines of energy. The guard assembled in perfect formation, their spears glowing faintly as conduits of power. Courtiers vanished into safe chambers, though not without leaving behind a trail of rumors and fears. Mira stood with the queen on the command balcony. Screens of crystal formed in the air, showing the approaching fleet, dark ships shaped like blades, cutting through the atmosphere with ruthless intent. "They want to break us," Mira said, watching the formation, "not just with weapons, but with fear. If the Covenant falls tonight, Earth and your house both lose." The queen nodded. "Then it must not fall." Mira stepped closer to the controls, studying the alien defenses. Her mind raced. She had learned much in her short time here. How their shields layered, how their ships moved, how the guard fought with near ritual precision. It was powerful, but it carried weakness. Patterns could be predicted. Strategies could be broken. "Majesty," Mira said quickly, "their fleet will expect you to fight with tradition, formation against formation, shield against shield. That is how you've always done it. But humans, we think differently." The queen tilted her head. "What do you propose?" Mira pointed to the screen. "They'll strike the shields first, hard. Instead of bracing all defenses, let them through in one controlled place. Create a false weakness. Draw them in. Once they commit, surround them with the guard and cut their line." The queen considered. Around them, guards and attendants whispered in disbelief. To lower defenses on purpose was unthinkable. Finally, the queen's eyes lit with decision. "Very well. We fight your way." The battle came swift. The raider fleet roared across the sky, unleashing fire against the palace shields. Energy shook the towers. But as Mira had said, the queen allowed a narrow gap to open. The raiders surged forward, certain of victory. Then the guard moved. Not in rigid formation, but in sudden, fluid maneuvers Mira had taught. They closed around the intruders, striking not with ritual, but with precision. The sky lit in bursts of fire and light. One by one, the raider ships faltered. Some fled. Others fell, broken against the shields they thought were weak. From the balcony, Mira and the queen watched as the last ship retreated into the night. Silence followed, heavy but victorious. Cheers rose from the guard. Even courtiers emerging from hiding could not deny what they had witnessed. The palace had stood, the Covenant had held, and it had been a human's vision that turned the tide. The queen looked at Mira, pride shining in her eyes. "You have proven it again. Your kind sees paths where we see only walls. This is why I wished for you." Mira allowed herself a smile, though her heart still pounded. Then maybe that wish was not so impossible after all. In the days that followed, the story spread. Not only through the palace, but across the world, and soon through the stars. The covenant of exchange became more than words. It became symbol. A human had stood beside the queen, not as servant, not as possession, but as partner in courage. Some still whispered against it, clinging to old ways. But others embraced it, seeing in it hope for a future where two peoples could walk side by side. On the final evening before Mira was to send her first report back to Earth, the queen met her again on the balcony. The sky shimmered with the light of distant ships carrying messages of alliance to other stars. "You will tell your world of this," the queen said softly. "Yes," Mira answered, "but not just of the battle. I'll tell them of what I saw here. The strength, the beauty, the chance to build something new. They need to hear that hope is possible." The queen's eyes lingered on her. "And you? Do you believe it truly?" Mira turned her gaze to the horizon, where night met dawn. She breathed deeply. "Yes, I do." For a moment, neither spoke. The silence was full, but not heavy. At last, the queen smiled, rare and genuine. "Then let this be our beginning, not our end." Mira returned the smile. A new dawn. The suns rose together, light spilling across the palace, across the city, across the bond of two worlds that had chosen to stand as one.